us youth pastors, we have a lot of free time on our hands, so I spend a lot of time online watching videos and doing different things. And I come across some really good videos occasionally, and this is one that I came across actually a few years ago, and I felt like that man in the hole, where there were walls around me and there was no way out. And I remembered that all I have to do is accept Jesus, and he gets me out of that hole. Has anybody here ever felt like that man in the hole? Like walls are closing in on you, and it's tight, and it's difficult. I think that we all go through roller coaster seasons where sometimes things are going really good, and sometimes things aren't. But there's one thing that consistently we can know, and that's that Jesus is there for us. And this morning, I want to go through an important question that I ask myself quite frequently, which is, why am I here? I do it in different times and different walks of life, but I'm always checking and seeing, why am I here? And a couple of weeks ago, I had the opportunity to preach as well, and although I was shooting for brownie points from the pastor and said that, we do have a good pastor and a great volunteer structure, we have great staff, we have a great session, I want to say, all joking aside, I really believe that. And when I think, why am I here, there's more than just, I enjoy this church. When I first came to apply for the position as youth pastor here, it was really interesting. We were actually at the Overeem's house this past Friday, and he was on the searching committee. It said it was very interesting walking into the room with about 14 people circled around you asking you questions. It was almost overwhelming at first, and as the questions were asked and as we began to communicate and I began to answer those questions, I had told them, I'm interviewing you just as much as you're interviewing me. Because I don't want just a job, but I want to find a community that I want to raise my child. At the time, Katie was pregnant, and now you all know we have a beautiful 13-month-old girl, which is crazy to think that she's already growing up so fast and scares me a little bit. But I was interviewing this church just as much as they were interviewing me. And it was interesting because after that first interview, I had really mixed feelings. And a few days later, there was another church that had contacted me. Actually, there was two churches, one in Sudbury, which, nobody really wants to move to Sudbury. People in Sudbury don't even want to live in Sudbury. So then there's Sarnia, which was closer to the family, and that was kind of attractive. And I began to pray, and there was just this strong sense of urge that I really enjoy Paris. There's something about this community that I really love, and I didn't really think too much after that feeling, and I contacted both churches and said, no, I've already got a position. Now, that was just after the first interview. So I kind of got nervous after I did that because I'm like, Shane, that might have been a really bad move. And then we had our second interview, and things just started feeling good. I'm like, I will be devastated at this point if I don't get the position because this is such a great opportunity. And as you can physically see, they decided to hire me, thank you God, for not throwing me under the bus there. So, but either way, it's just funny how God works, right? It's funny how he puts us down these paths and we don't see the end, but we trust him anyways, right? Like it seems kind of crazy to some people, the decisions that we make and the moves that we make. But I'm here because I trust in what God's doing in this community, in this church, and in my life. So it's one of the reasons why I'm here. Now, as I'm going through this, I want you to think about why you personally are here. But this morning I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I'm here. The first thing is I enjoy being challenged. Because I believe that when we're being challenged, we grow. If we're not being challenged, it's a little bit difficult to grow because we get comfortable where we are. I believe that we get challenged from Sunday morning services, the messages that are preached, the worship, and the songs that we sing. A lot of the songs that we sing, all the songs that we sing on a Sunday morning, are more than just words. It's more than just music. It's worship to God. And occasionally, Chuck throws in a new song that I've never heard before, more often than not, and I'm challenged by it because I get to experience what the writer, what the singers are feeling in that song. So I believe that by coming here and being challenged and growing, that's why I like coming to this church. Another reason is I like to learn and experience. We have some pretty smart cookies at this church, I must say. And I've had some really good conversations with people from this congregation. And I really enjoy learning about people's experiences with God, things that people have learned about God. And I really find that we get a good biblical teaching here. And to me, that's extremely important. Because just as we were joking this morning about school and how you learn, I probably wasn't the best student in school, but I did learn some things. But I find that when I come here with you and we learn together, I enjoy it. I have fun experiencing and learning with all of you. The third reason why I really like to come to the church is for encouragement and fellowship. Now, I love to be encouraged, just to plant that bug in your ear. But I also enjoy encouraging others. Because as that man in the hole, we all kind of face that sometime in our life. But when we have people that come beside us and encourage us and help us through it, it's nice to know that we're cared about and that we're loved. And so I love coming here to be encouraged by you. I mean, there's been services that after the service I completely feel that I bombed it, but yet you guys still come and shake my hand afterwards and say that was an interesting message and better luck next time. No, but you've all been very encouraging and very supportive, and I thank you. But I can see that with different guest speakers. I can see that with our pastor. I can see that with our staff, how encouraging you guys really are. And I think that that's important to understand that these things are making up a very healthy church. That we're friends and family, but I look at all of you as my family. And some of you we spend a lot more time with than others. It's interesting, Katie and my family are all down kind of Windsor way. And for those of you that ever drive that way, it's extremely boring. It's an extremely long stretch of road. So we like to pick and choose when we go down. But it's amazing how we've built relationships here and how we spend time with those friends. But yet I see them more than my actual family. And we get love and support and support from some of the people in this congregation that really helps Katie and I when we're raising Paige and have no idea what we're doing sometimes, and I'm sure that we've all been there. But it's just great to come alongside people and just encourage them and support them. So different ways that we can do this. Number one, come to church. I think that that's pretty easy, and I feel that just by saying that, I'm preaching to the choir because you're already here. So coming to church is a great place to start. Coming in the building, I always feel comfortable, and before the service, there's people that are mingling and talking, and after the service, there's people who are mingling and talking and talking and talking, and then the lights go off and they're talking, and the doors are locked and they're talking, but it's a great atmosphere, and I really enjoy it. I mean, aside from me getting paid to talk, I also enjoy doing it. And I feel that there's a lot of people in here that enjoy doing it as well. So just coming to church and being able to spend time together is a good place to start. If you can't make it to church, technology has made it available that we can watch these sermons online. For those of you that did not know that, if you go onto our website, you can actually watch the sermons. As long as all of our tech stuff is working properly, which usually it is, but occasionally it's not. So, I mean, if you ever begin to miss Joel because you've been away for so long and you want to log online just so that you can see his beautiful face and listen to his beautiful voice, you can do that. You can go online, you can listen to the sermons so that you're still on the same page, even though you're not here on a Sunday morning. There's another one, and there's something that we're going to be starting up with our youth ministry coming this fall, and that's journaling. Writing down our feelings, our thoughts, and communicating on paper. I feel that it's an art that's been lost over the years, and I love to write, but I don't enjoy reading, which is unusual. But I love writing things down. And when I was growing up, I was encouraged by somebody to always bring a booklet or a pad of paper or something to church, and occasionally you'll hear something that you really want to remember. And my brain can only hold so much information. So when I write it down, I can read it later. And it was interesting because we were kind of doing some cleaning at our house, and I was going through a box and I saw one of my old journals. And I decided to open it up and realized that my writing's gotten a lot better in the years, and I kind of had some difficulty reading the words. But as I started flipping through and reading what I was writing, I remembered a lot of the emotions and experiences that I've had. A lot of the reasons why I'm actually where I am, and the things that God was speaking into my life 5, 6, 7 years ago. And it was amazing and encouraging to see how far I've actually come since I wrote those words. So I encourage you to try something, to try journaling, maybe even bring some paper on a Sunday morning. And when you hear something, you're like, oh, I really want to remember that, to write it down. To spend time together. Joel spoke last week on, I believe it was either last week or the week before, on leaving margins in our life. That's a real challenge sometimes, I believe, for us to actually leave blocks of open time in our life, or not to set things in stone because sometimes things will pop up. But you know what's great? Coming to church on a Sunday morning and a family coming up to me and saying, hey, do you want to come over for lunch like the Cummings often do? Do you want to come over for lunch and spend some time with us? Do you want to come over for a barbecue? Do you want to come over for a bonfire? Do you want to come over for a cup of tea and just sit and talk? It's nice to know sometimes that we're loved and wanted, right? We all like that feeling that somebody actually wants to spend time with us. I mean, I thought originally that's why I got married, was because, hey, I actually found somebody that can stand me and wants to spend some time with me. It's not the best reason to get married, but I mean, that was definitely one of them in there. But it is a great feeling to know that we're wanted and loved by other people. So let's start spending time together by inviting others over or by accepting invitations as well. And the last one I'm going to say is pray for one another. There was an event that happened last week. Cheryl Jones, who's one of our youth leaders, she was sitting in a hammock seat and it came dislodged and she fractured her tailbone, which is extremely painful and And where we were, they took care of her, and they put her on the bed, and they were sitting with her, and we're like, oh, we got to get her to the doctors, we got to get her to the hospital, how are we going to do this? And we're figuring out logistics. And a man from this congregation named Bruce, who is not here this morning, came in, and we told him what had happened, and he went right to the room, and his first train of thought was, let's pray for you. And I laughed because I didn't even think of that. That was not the first thing that came to my head. The first thing that came to my head is, you're in pain. We have to get you to the hospital. We have to get doctors looking at this. And that's where my mind went. But someone from this congregation came in and said, you know what? Let's lay hands and pray for you right now. And that was extremely encouraging to me last week, because it started getting my gears turning and thinking, where are we motivated? What are we thinking? And what's number one in our life? So although that was very encouraging, it was unfortunate circumstances that I was able to see that lesson. So why are you here? Why are you here now? Why do you live in Paris or the surrounding area? Why do you come to this church? Why do you either work in this community or work around here? Now, as a youth pastor, I began to think, why are the youth here? Why do the youth come to this church? What are we doing that is bringing them to us? I'm going to explain that. See, youth group at this church is Friday nights. And when I first started, I really didn't like that, because I didn't want to have to compete with all the cool things that people do on Friday nights. And youth live very socially busy lives, typically. I said it's almost suicide to have a youth night on a Friday night, because why would a kid or youth come to church when they could be hanging out with their friends, going to the movie theaters, or going bowling, because I don't know if youth still do that, or going to the Paris Fair, which was actually kind of nice because we still had 11 youth come out to youth group, even though that Paris Fair was still going on. So we must be doing something right. But I began to think, why are the youth coming to this church? And over the years, I've been doing a lot of research and a lot of studying as to, what is attracting youth to church. At the same time, how do we keep them in the church? And there's a lot of different statistics. You can use any statistics to really prove your theory. It just depends on where you get it from and how you use it. So I'm not going to give you exact statistics, but I will tell you this. For youth graduating out of high school, it is exponentially growing how many are leaving the church. And that scares me. That really scares me that I spend all these years investing and pouring resources and energy and time into them, but yet we're still losing them. So I began to look and research and figure out what is going on in the lives of the youth that are staying. So why are they staying? And what's going on in the youth's lives that are leaving? What is the difference? And now there's no foolproof plan saying if you hit this, this, and this, they're going to stay for the rest of their lives. But I want to know, instead of pouring all these resources and time and energy, if we start intentionally pouring resources and time and energy in areas that we need to focus in, will our retention be better? And so there's a few books that I've read or skimmed through. There's some skimmed through. There's some documents and different things. People have sent me some stuff through Facebook with some information. And this is kind of what I've come up with of what we can be doing as a church, as a congregation, and as a family to really pour in to the youth's lives to hopefully get them to stay. The first thing that came to my attention is, are they saved? Are they Christians? Are they born again? And it's interesting because when I was traveling across Canada, what I heard a lot was they're really good kids. They're really well behaved when they're in church. Well, I'm going to say I would rather have a youth that's not well behaved in church, but is saved, personally. I'd rather have one that thinks a little bit differently or doesn't show up all the time, but is saved and knows Jesus. So what I really want to get away from is just saying, well, you know what? They are really good kids. And really intentionally pouring into their lives and saying, we care about your spiritual health. So that's one. The second one is building relationships and friendships. This past year in youth ministry, what I've really been focusing on is building rapport with the youth. Building that lasting relationship, building friendships. I mean, number one, it's great for me because I actually get to have fun. So I definitely can't complain about that. I remember somebody, not from here, but somewhere else, we took the youth on a paintball trip. And the person's like, how are you bringing them to Jesus by shooting them with a paintball gun? And it's interesting because it's an extreme feeling when you're standing next to a youth and you have a paintball gun and they have a paintball gun and there's people on the other side of the field that want to hit us at about 300 feet per second with these little paintballs that are definitely going to hurt, and you look at them and you are trusting each other because you are going down together if you're getting shot. And I remember taking this youth group paintballing, and it was so much fun to see them. I remember seeing Shailene crawling, doing an army crawl, sneaking up behind the pastor from the Maranatha Church and shooting him. It was awesome. It was so great. But it was just great to get together with the other local youth groups and just to have some fun. Because those are memories. Those are things that we did together that we'll never forget. So by building these relationships and these friendships, we can get them to stay because they remember having fun with us and being real. Another one is equipping them, not just entertaining them. Now, this is a difficult one sometimes for youth pastors because we know if we provide entertainment, the youth will come. The numbers will go up. We'll get raises, hopefully. That people will think that we're doing a good job. Because the first question that I get any conference or any meeting or anything I go to is, how many youth do you have coming out? And what I want to get away from is I don't necessarily care how many are coming out, but what the quality of their relationship with God is. We could have 30 youth that are coming out having a good time that don't know Jesus from a lamppost, but I'd rather have 3 that are coming out that are on fire for God. And I think it's our jobs to equip the youth to go out and to really be able to do Jesus' work. And I'm going to tell you this, youth have a better opportunity than some of us to share the gospel of God. I'm going to tell you why, because they go to school. That is a breeding ground for so many different things. And it's a very difficult place for youth to go if they're Christian believers. Because there is a lot of judgment, there is a lot of peer pressure. There's media and friends doing things and language barriers and there's so many different things at school. But I believe if we equip them to show them how do they go into their schools and in their community and still be a Christian, I think that we're going to be a lot more effective. And by doing that, I believe that we need to provide opportunities for them to grow. A little while ago, we had a co-op student from the high school. His name was Dave Palmerton, who was coming on a weekly basis and either sitting in with Joel or Stephanie or Chuck or myself and kind of learning what does it mean to be in ministry. And then on Friday nights, he would come out to youth group. And Dave is an awesome guy. He is definitely on fire for God. But one thing that he knew is he was too quiet. He didn't really like to express himself or talk. He would rather sit in the conversation and listen and just enjoy being with people. And so through the school year, he was coming out, and I told him, eventually we're going to get you up in front of the youth and you're going to say something. And he would shake because he'd get so nervous that I was going to throw him up there. And eventually on his last day, I told him, you're going to be preaching. And he was really nervous. It was really cool because he came in this awesome white suit. It was great. I absolutely loved it. And he came up here and he spoke from his heart. Now, he was uncomfortable to kind of freely talk or express himself, so he wrote everything down and he kind of more read from the paper. But you know what was great? Is that after he was done speaking, all the youth that were here clapped. Now, I never get a clap when I'm done preaching, just so you guys know. They never give me a cheer. I've never heard you guys give Joel a cheer after he's done preaching. But when Dave was done, they all gave him a round of applause. And he felt great afterwards because he did it. He accomplished it. There was, at my last youth group, there was another boy who was kind of learning, and I threw him up there, and he preached a message. And I remember sitting back and listening. Like, well, I probably would have said that differently. And he stuttered on some words, and you could tell that he was really nervous, and he was sweating, and he was jittery, and he was shaky, and it might not have been the best performance. But the interesting thing is that in the weeks to come, the youth were talking about his message and what he was talking about. And I believe because it didn't matter how professional or amazing he shared that message, it was peer to peer. And he was able to relate to the kids and pour into their lives. So I believe that providing opportunities for growth also means providing opportunities for our youth to fail. And for a lot of parents, that's hard. Because we don't want to see our kids fail. We don't want to see our kids mess up or make a mistake. But sometimes that's the best way for them to learn and move on. I remember growing up when my mom would always say, if you do that, you're going to be sorry. And then I would do it, and I would mess up, and she would say, I told you so. But I needed to go through that experience to learn it for myself. And sometimes our youth need that. The last one that I have here is parental guidance and speaking to them about the gospel. You see, I see the youth maybe 1, 2, if I'm really lucky, 3 times a week. I can't do this on my own. And I feel that some of you feel that too, that you can't do this on your own. And what I really want to do in this next year is I want to begin working together with parents, grandparents, and the congregation to working together to intentionally influence the youth's lives. That this isn't just a Friday night where they come to hang out with their friends and then they go and then they fall back into their same routines. But that everywhere they go, we're encouraging them and sharing the gospel with them. I think that's important. And there's going to be some upcoming opportunities for us to be able to do that with the youth. I mentioned earlier, and I'll just touch on it, we are going to the Dominican next year. And although that's a youth-sponsored trip, that doesn't mean that if you're not a youth, you can't go. So even with something like that, if you wanted to come and encourage the youth and help them, you're more than welcome to come. Or if you wanted to support them in a fundraiser or encourage them or prepare them for what they're going to experience because you've been on a trip, I encourage you to do that as well. Prayer. It works. It really does. We need all the prayer we can get. The youth and the youth leaders. It was interesting because my wife used to be a personal support worker, and she would work with youth with disabilities, and some of them were very strong. She would work in an aggressive home. I remember looking at her, I'm like, I couldn't do what you do. When you deal with these, disabilities and everything else, like I don't have the patience. And she looked back at me and she's like, you deal with neglectful teenagers all the time at your youth group. How do you do that? And for me, where I'm at, I can deal with disobedient teens because I believe that somewhere down in there, there's still hope. I never look at a teenager and say, you're a write-off, I'm going to go on to the next one. But I believe everyone has an opportunity to fall in love with Christ the same way that I do. So there's prayer that we're always needing. There's events that we do. For example, next month, we're going paintballing again. So, I hear some giggles. So, if you're thinking that, hey, that's something I've always wanted to do, join us. Come on out to the playing field and we'll have some fun with some paintball guns. That would be a great way to get involved. But we do other things as well as a youth group. They're not all painful. So I encourage you guys to get involved with those things as well. This past Thursday, the youth actually ran the community dinner. And we've been going through life skills with them and teaching them how to cook. And they made pizza from scratch. Now, we made so much pizza, it started to get cold. So I apologize for those of you that were there that got some cold slices, but it was good pizza. They did a very good job. And it was great because all the volunteers from the community dinner kept on showing up and standing there and like, so I guess you don't need us, eh? And then they would just kind of slowly leave. Except for the cleanup, we definitely used, thank you very much for your help cleaning up. When the youth cook, I've taught them well. They use every dish in the kitchen. So we always need help cleaning up for sure. But it's just great to see the youth involved, not only in the community, but in the church. And there will be opportunities and events that I'm going to be bringing up that sometimes we will need help or volunteers. And I encourage you guys to come alongside and really help us. And there's one more thing that we could really always use help with. And I know that people at this church are really good for it, and that's food. You see, one thing with youth is they love to eat a lot, all the time, every youth night. So what are we eating tonight? We're not eating anything. Really? So if you ever feel like, I really just want to bake some cookies, or if Brent Cochran decides to make some brownies, wherever you are, we'll take them, man. I will take the brownies off your hands at any point. But we can always use food. It's a great way to help us out, and it's a great thing for youth. You see, I'm a believer in doing things really well. And I think that if every time we meet there's food there, then we're doing really well. And it's interesting because I even have this conversation when I buy food for the youth. I buy name brand Doritos and name brand pop because, believe it or not, that actually kind of means a lot to them that we have name brand stuff. So by having good brownies and good cookies and good muffins, that means a lot to them too. So there's ways that we can get involved in the youth's lives. And I will make that available for you guys to know where we need help. So I pray for you guys and what's going on with your lives, but I will let you know what's going on in our lives, in the youth's lives, and anything that you can do to help us out would be appreciated. Let's stand, and we're going to worship today.